So typically when we start the scanning process, we're going to go through what we refer to as host discovery, which is again detecting hosts that are live on the target network. Now, there are several tools that you can utilize. Some of them are GUI based, some of them are command line based. For example, I could use Angry IP Scanner as well as Nmap. And I know that Nmap here is typically looked at as a DOS-based or command prompt only environment. This is the GUI version that's called Zenmap. There are also other tools out there. Again, I'm not going to tell you which ones to use. I'm just going to highlight some that you may want to be aware of for your immediate future. One of those would include the Colasoft Ping tool, which you can see is quite graphical. And these tools aren't necessarily meant to be devious in nature. It's just that we can use them that way. So now that I've gathered a list of nodes that are out there and active on the network, my next goal is to do what they refer to as a port scan. And what we mean by port scan is being able to go and see what basically doors are open. And through these doors, an attacker can install malware on a system or take advantage of certain vulnerabilities. Therefore, you should always check to see which ports are open. And again, as we mentioned before, close them if they're not necessary. Now, again, some of the tools that we can use, you might see some repeats here. That's fine because some of the tools are multi-purpose tools. But obviously we have tools like Nmap, which we already know about. There's also NetScan Tools Pro, as well as PRTG Network Monitor and SuperScan. And again, you might have your own tools that you really prefer. Just follow my rule that I gave you before. Pick one, learn it, love it, and live it. I would probably really make you focus on Nmap for your immediate future, as well as your real world. Nmap is so versatile. I really should get paid by these companies to talk about their product, huh? Just tell them Dale sent you. So next step then would be to do a banner grab. We sometimes also refer to this as an operating system fingerprint. So here's the skinny. Remember, so doing a banner grab, we can actually send certain commands to a system and it responds a specific way. And we know that Windows machines respond a certain way, as well as Linux machines respond a different way to the same commands. And of course, Macs do the same thing. Typically, these responses actually identify the operating system, which again lets us find and exploit the vulnerability related to that operating system. So the tools that we use for banner grabbing include tools such as Telnet. Remember, I can create a Telnet session, break it, and a Microsoft machine kicks back and says, hey, Microsoft server. If you want to do it from a public perspective, meaning look at someone's web server that's exposed to the internet, we talked about Netcraft, a great tool, as well as IDServe. Now, once we've gathered this information, our next step is to actually scan for vulnerabilities. Now, scanning the network for vulnerabilities, we can use certain tools. Again, you may have your own preferences. I'm going to just give you some highlights here, but there's obviously Core Impact Pro. There's also Retina. I'm a big fan of Retina. I've used it in the past, as well as Nessus. Believe it or not, Microsoft makes one that's called the MBSA, or the Baseline Security Analyzer, and GFI LandGuard. Our whole purpose here is to try to determine the security weakness or the loopholes of those target systems. I now know that it's a Microsoft machine, or I now know it's an Apache server. So what vulnerabilities can I try throwing at it? These type of tools will help us to see which vulnerabilities would actually work. Now, by this point, we've got a lot of information, and this kind of goes along with documentation, but one of the things we talked about also that you should do in your pen test is draw out the network. This helps us to kind of understand the connection and path between the nodes on the network. And there are several tools out there that we can use to draw a network diagram out very easily. Those tools would include things like SolarWinds Network Typology Manager. Some of these tools are free, some of them are trialware, and some of them are obviously paid product. There's also the dude. What's my tattoos say? Dude. Anybody on that one? That'd be Dude, Where's My Car? Another homework assignment for you. There's also other tools out there like Friendly Pinger. Again, our goal is to give us a visual representation to help us better understand what's going on here. Now that we know the targets, we've fully identified them, we've been able to draw out the network, we know what their vulnerabilities are, the next step during pen testing would be then to fire up your proxies. Now, the proxy is designed to basically hide ourselves so that the customer or client can't determine where the attack is coming from. Now, we could fire up some proxies internally as well as externally. And again, there are several tools out there that we can utilize as well. There's tools like the Proxy Workbench. You can see that this one's a GUI interface. A quick and dirty proxy would be using the Tor network. And there's another product out there, especially for you Mac OS folks, called the Proxifier. Again, we're going to get a list of IP addresses, and you can select how many you want to use. Some of these proxies are free services. In fact, go out and Google free proxies and see if you can create a proxy chain. In fact, there's another product out there that's called Socks Chain. Now, we've got a ton of information at this point. So at the end of every domain, you're going to see me talk about documentation. It's the most important step in pen testing because it helps us to preserve all the outcomes of the tests that we've conducted. It'll also help us in finding potential vulnerabilities on the network, of which case we obviously will offer up some countermeasures. But we also need to show the client how we were able to accomplish what we did. Kind of a way of legitimizing what we did and what an attacker could do to them.